Welcome to episode 13 of the Silver Savage podcast. This episode is brought to you by Masada Tactical, the only place to learn authentic Israeli-based tactics in Maryland and surrounding areas. All classes are taught by graduates of Israeli and American Special Operations and Combat Units and sworn law enforcement officers. Masada Tactical is classes for tactical operators, as well as civilians who just want to get in better shape while learning how to protect themselves and their loved ones. Visit training.masadatactical.com for a list of all the classes and seminars. Use the code SilverSavage10 for 10% off when you sign up for a class. Our guest today is Paul Landreth Smith, aka British Paul. Paul is a veteran police officer from the UK with 18 years of experience, much of it as part of the SCO-19 unit, where his duties included crime suppression, anti-terrorism operations, and dignitary protection, including that of royalty and the President of the United States. Now living in the US, Paul leverages warrior mindset and works as a paramedic in an urban environment. With over 34 years of experience in martial arts, including several styles such as Krav Maga, BJJ, Muay Thai, and boxing, he spends his time writing, teaching personal protection, and empowering people to take ownership of their own safety and security. Here's a conversation with Paul.
Have you been in the States now?
9 years.
I love that you still have your accent.
Well, how would I lose it? Everyone's like, "Oh, you've still got your accent." I'm like,
I mean, I lost my New York accent. I'm originally from New York City, but I've lost it.
No, you haven't. How have you?
22 years.
Trust me, it's. I mean, yeah. Look at you. I mean, especially you, BK. It's just. I find it funny. I don't have my New York accent.
Say coffee.
Coffee.
There you go.
Okay, I stand corrected. Sorry. Damn, Brett.
I'm just curious if this is going to play out. Our listeners are going to be like, "We can't understand BK. We can't understand Paul." This is just.
I'll translate for both of you, okay? Because I've been with you long enough, BK, and I got the. I think I told you, Paul, when I met you the first time. I'm an honorary member of Her Majesty's Royal Air Force. I got to deploy with some of you bloody wankas for some time.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate. I apologize. Yeah,
yeah.
That's funny. So Paul, let me ask you before we even get started. I know I asked you before. How do you feel about 4th of July?
So what's amusing about the 4th of July is the amount of people that ask me, and they're always kind of surprised because they're like, "What? You don't celebrate that in England?" I'm like, "No, we don't. That's not a thing."
Erased it from the history books.
Yeah. So then they go, "What about Thanksgiving?" I'm like, "No." And then they say, "Do you have Christmas?" Yes.
Don't separate religion from nationality very well here. Let me ask you one more. St. Paddy's Day.
Oh, the plastic paddies. Oh my God. Yeah, just everyone. Everyone that thinks they've got, everyone's Irish, aren't they? Everyone thinks they're Irish. Right? It's like, okay.
Except for the Scottish. They're still Scottish.
They're still Scottish, and I suppose the Welsh. And yeah, the sort of nationalistic hatred of the English, which is historically well deserved. So,
I was in Georgia this past week, and obviously it was St. Paddy's Day on Thursday night, and it was also a Jewish holiday called Purim, which is customary to get drunk to a point you cannot differentiate between good and evil. So yeah, it's pretty freaking smashed.
That's quite drunk. Yeah.
What?
Isn't it?
Sorry, I'm losing you.
It's kind of counterproductive.
Well,
I said, but isn't that counterproductive? You can't differentiate good and evil. Isn't religion supposed to save you from that? Not put you in a position to.
Historically, and I'm not a rabbi, so I'm gonna.
Isn't it the whole Esther thing?
Yeah, it is the whole Esther thing, but more of it is the bad guy confusing him, so he didn't know who to kill and who not to kill. So
okay.
But anyways, so I'm in Georgia, and I'm marrying an Irish girl, so like I feel like it's worth trying, celebrating both holidays at the same time. And no, it wasn't.
How'd that go?
Well, honestly, I was saved by my baby. My baby's like started crying. Like, okay, I gotta go to bed because this is not gonna end well otherwise. So Baby was the heat of the convention, though. There's about 300 SWAT guys and one 6-month-old baby. And if you ever want to see a SWAT guy turn to mush, just present them with a 6-month baby. So it was hilarious. But anyways,
just happy the baby's not theirs.
Yeah. probably.
Yeah.
You know what? Everybody's pull-up game is better than mine, apparently. On that note, so we have Paul Landreth Smith. Did I pronounce it correct?
Pretty much, yeah, that'll work.
You couldn't understand what you said anyway. He's accent.
We'll just call him British Paul.
British Paul, there we go.
British Paul.
Because we have to differentiate between all the Pauls that we know. We just had Paul Jackson on the show recently.
He's a bad man for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's the American Paul.
Yep.
So we do hang out in similar circles, oftentimes all of us together. So we got to put some differentiator there. So when I say Paul, I know which one we're talking about. But Paul, I've known you. I met you a few years back through Ernie.
Yep.
Right? And I think it's worth discussing this because we brought it up before we hit record, before Steve joined. But a lot of the people we've been having on the show and a lot of the people we hang out with is acquaintances through Ernie. So
yes.
This Ernie dude. Who's Ernie?
Wow. Yeah, that's a deep question. Ernie he's an incredible people person that has a talent of bringing together like-minded individuals, misfits and like-minded individuals who and it's always in these crazy situations in the middle of nowhere or I don't know wherever. But he we all know Ernie. And then he just goes, "Oh, right. Hey guys, I know this guy. You really love this guy. You gotta meet him.
That's scary. That's freaking scary.
That is the best impression of Ernie I have ever heard. That is unbelievable. If I did not watch you on the camera, I would have. Oh, right. But Paul, you met Ernie. You were still in England, right? You came here to train with him, correct?
2005. He came over. He came over to train. So we were part of an organization, and he was their self-defense trainer. So it was him. There was Jeff Jimmo, and they came across, and they were training on like a national weekend college kind of thing, instructor certification. And Ernie was doing his thing, and he was really worried because he came up to me after he said, man, they hate me. No one's saying anything. And I'm like, no, they really like you. The British, they just like stone faced. They just don't talk. I said, no, they really like you. And that was my first introduction to Krav Maga, which I didn't know I was missing in my life at the time. And so one weekend wasn't enough, and I very quickly arranged a trip to the US where I came and a couple of other people, and we spent 8 days in his gym and just got the crap kicked out of us. And I think that's probably where I first met you, roundabout. And then, of course, one of the first Krav camps, and then I went to one of your close protection courses, and so on and so on and so on. And yeah, so we've all known each other a long time, but I first met Ernie 2005.
So you mentioned the certain outfit you were with in England. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, in 1995, a long time ago, I joined the British police force.
Do they still not carry guns?
About 99% do not carry guns. Yeah. They are unarmed. And I had a big tall hat and a stick and my fists, and that was that was all I had, and I was that for 5 years.
You have a picture of those days?
Have I got a picture of those days? Yeah, of course I do. Somewhere I'll find one. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I would love to add it. So when we post the video up, because this goes also on YouTube.
Okay.
I'll put that on so people can have an image of in 1995 with a big Bobby hat on. I'll find out. My recruiting photo. I always laughed. I said, "Well, this is the one that they'll show on the TV when I get killed." Because I'm kind of like there with my hat. So I did that for 5 years, and I loved it. And then I transferred into, I kind of gravitated towards
they call it operational support, which is a euphemism for riot police. The British police don't like using scary, threatening terms, so they say like the police service. They don't like calling it police force. And operational support is you support operations, which is true, but you're the riot cops. So I had a NATO helmet with a shield and a shield, and we would go to all the football matches and spontaneous. I say spontaneous disorder. So your average British male on a kind of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, he likes to go out, drink to the point where he doesn't differentiate between
you're all Jews.
people. Yeah, and they fight.
It's like porn. So, it's porn.
So we would go in. So we would go in and break all that off.
Your microphone is giving some bad echo, so I don't know if you can adjust that.
It's the gravitational pull of his awesomeness.
That's probably true. Probably true. All right.
Kind of like with your crotch. Remember when we discovered your crotch had a gravitational pull? BK?
That's my crotch. Yeah, I have the picture. I drop a magazine and it just drops to the ground upright and doesn't fall. And apparently, according to Steve, it's my crotch gravitational pull.
Oh,
it was pretty funny.
That is an interesting skill.
I thought so.
It's a real thing.
Okay. Well, then after a couple of years in operational support, I got into the firearms. And in the UK, there are different levels of firearms officer. Your base level is what's called an authorized firearms officer. And they are guys who are authorized to carry a gun. And then a little bit more training. I say a little bit more, but it's actually on like an equivalency in the US. It would be kind of like a low-level SWAT unit. And they're called armed response vehicles, ARVs, and they react spontaneously to problems. And they're trained in vehicle tactics, pedestrian tactics, containment. And then you kind of branch off from there, and you can go into VIP protection. You can become a rifleman, because of course a sniper, that's a scary word, but you become a rifleman, or you go into hostage rescue, and then those kind of go further still, and you get into the more proactive elements. So I ended up working for London's SCO 19 as a CTSFO, so a counterterrorism specialist firearms officer. And they are service providers to other agencies. So, for example, if there's a kidnap and they need a hostage rescue team, then they would come to us and we would help with that. If there's a high-level diplomatic protection, so for example, when William and Kate got married, when the Queen's Diamond Jubilee, when POTUS came over, they would use us to provide additional protection capabilities for that. And we did a lot of counterterrorism work, which of course a lot more goes on than the public are aware of, particularly around the run-up to the Olympics and so on. So we were very gainfully employed, and we had some really cool training. We dovetailed with SF, who aren't allowed to operate on the mainland because they are, but they brought a lot to the party. So we would be operating alongside them a lot. And yeah, it was a great time. I did that for 11 years, and I became an instructor for them as well. So I was instructor certified in CQC and all the defensive tactics, and I was a breacher on the team. So I would use kinetics or explosives if we needed to. And I was a medic on the team as well. So that was a lot of fun to try and do that under fast pace.
Yeah, and we're going to get into the medical side because I know that's what you do nowadays.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves too quick.
Sure.
I'm actually going to go back a little bit. You wrote a book.
I did.
And I read the book, and I thought the book, first of all, was very entertaining, was very funny, and I love a lot of stories on it. But you gravitated towards that warrior mindset way before you were a cop.
Yeah. So the book is called Sheepdog with a Black Belt. It's basically a summary of my experiences of training in different martial arts styles and their appropriateness for the real world. And just to earn a little bit of extra money when I was in college, I worked as a security, like a doorman, basically.
We call it a bouncer in America.
Yeah, a bouncer.
There's a great documentary on that, by the way, that I watched. and I didn't realize how serious they take that in England.
Oh yeah. You have to go through like certification processes.
Yeah.
You can't.
It's nothing like the U.S. I mean,
probably should do it here.
Yeah, it's BK. You would appreciate it, and it's funny you brought it up because I was so intrigued at the certifications. Like you said, you got to get vetted, and you have to be represented by a specific type of agency, and their credibility goes a long way, and the professionalism that goes into that profession when they're being dormant. I was really surprised because we do not do that at all in the U.S.
Well, it didn't used to be, but it became more and more ingrained. So I was right at the beginning of that process when they started introducing the license.
You're the reason why they had to do the process. I get it now.
There's always the one person that's the cause for safety briefing.
Yes,
that would be Paul.
That would be me.
Hey, there's a couple policies on my police department that exist because of me, but that's another story.
So yeah, the book is basically me training different martial arts styles and then experiencing real fights and going, that didn't work so well, or just kind of basically getting my ass kicked occasionally and thinking, okay, so what went wrong there? How can I address that? How can I fix that in the training which is available to me? Because when I first started training, so I started training martial arts in 1989, and really all there was in a popular sense was sport karate, taekwondo, those kind of things. UFC wasn't a thing then. It became a thing, and it was like this crazy thing that you saw on the TV, and it was finding a legitimate grappling school or a legitimate BJJ school was very hard. It's not like now where they're all over the place. So trying to find the right places to train, and the book is all about that, essentially, like my journey in terms of how it worked, and as I got more into it, I got more into the psychology of it in terms of fear and fear responses, and how what you think you're going to do and what you actually do are different things.
Absolutely.
And also a little bit of frustration, I guess, in terms of how other people take their training, because a lot of people get very blinkered and they think, I'm a black belt in taekwondo, and I'm like, okay, great, that's nice. You probably can't have a real fight though, and I'm sorry, I'm going to insult a lot of people on this podcast, maybe, but yeah,
we do that every time. It's a prerequisite, Paul.
You're not going to do it. We're going to have to. So might as well be you.
But yeah, I mean, there are certain things you can do, and I get a lot of people that come to me and they say, I mean, you've read the book, so right at the end, I kind of summarize and I say, a lot of people come to me and they're like, how can I defend myself? And I'm like, okay, well, firstly, you need to get fit and strong,
right?
Because that's it.
Right. When people come and tell me either on Krav or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or whatever, and they're like, well, these skills designed so a smaller person can do it against a bigger person. Like, to an extent.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. To an extent, but the bigger, stronger people who've got more cardio will win.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I'm being the smaller, typically guy around. I just got to be more aggressive. That's how I make up for that, shortcoming. But yeah, there's no substitution for size and strength.
Yeah. So yeah, and endurance, and I use the analogy in the book of if you want a very challenging person to have a fight with, then go down to a CrossFit gym and pick somebody and say, okay, we'll fight that guy, and who's just throwing weights around non-stop and doing all these AMRAPs, and you're like, yeah, he's going to be a handful,
right?
And he's got no training, he's just strong and will keep going, or like a professional rugby player or something like that. It'd be a nightmare.
Did you ever play rugby?
Yeah, I did.
What position were you?
I was an outside center or inside center. Okay, so you were right there in the middle of it, being supported by the bigger boys. Okay,
yeah, because I'm the smallest guy, so I'm like, you're going to go in the middle and hook that ball and pull it out.
Yeah, I was in the high school band.
Okay,
that's close enough.
Yeah, that's close. It's almost the same.
my kids saw the rugby ball I have, and they're like, Daddy, what's that? And I go, it's a rugby ball. And they go, is that like football? Like, it's kind of like football, but for men.
This is true.
Well,
you think about it, you don't have to wear tights like they do in American football.
You wear short shorts, which is a lot manlier.
Yes. Exactly. They're silkies, essentially.
Right. They're Bridget silkies.
Yep. That is true. Yeah, it is a lot more manly.
Sorry. So we digress though. So you're right. You go to a CrossFit gym, and I always tell my students, the person that's going to win a fight, it's not the one with the prettier punch or the nicer kick. It's the one that didn't quit, the one that didn't give up. And that's really where endurance kicks in.
Mm-hmm.
So when we do a promotion test, and you're familiar because you've seen similar ones by Ernie, it's a grueling test of about anywhere from 5 to 8 hours. And my goal is just to see who quits. I assume that you know the skills if I allow you to test to the next level. I just want to see that you have what it takes to not give up.
And that mindset is a hard concept for a lot of people to wrap their heads around. Like they come to you and they want, I always call it the Bruce Lee pill. I want to, it's like they come and they say, I'm going to be going to Europe in about 6 weeks. So can you show me a few things that I could do to I'm like, well, yeah, I could show you, but that's like saying, yeah, my daughter's getting married in 6 weeks and I want to play a piano concerto. So can you just show me like a few notes on the piano, or I could like, that's not how that works.
I like that analogy.
I kind of like screwed my head up a little bit. It was such a contrast, but just very well explained.
Yeah, it's a skill set, and typically, actually, what I teach people is not what I would do, because that's not appropriate. And I think a lot of martial arts instructors, they fall into this trap of kind of showing their skill set and then, well, this is what I would do, and trying to make their students, carbon copies of them. And I'm like, okay, so I'm almost 50, 2 weeks. I'm going to be 50. So I've got 34 years of martial art training. I've got black belts in Taekwondo, kickboxing, Krav Maga. I'm a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've done Aikido, a little bit of Kung Fu here and there. I've got a hella lot of real-world experience from fighting criminals who are trying to get away, or a couple of them actually trying to really badly hurt me. So what I do is based off all those experiences, and it's not appropriate to then go to a middle-aged couple who have got no formal training and say, well, you need to do this, because it's like, well, no, that's not going to work for you, because you just won't be able to do it. And it's not because I'm amazing, it's just because that's who I am. You get, I mean, you have to pass it down and say, okay, well, and I was having this conversation with a guy the other day actually about the syllabus within Krav Maga, and I'm saying the syllabus looks kind of weird, but there's a reason why it looks like that, and that's because it is a reasonable expectation for the general population. And then what you do is you train people, they start to get into it, and then you can start diverging off depending on your personal preferences, your size, just how aggressive you are or not. And then you end up training in something which kind of looks like Krav Maga, but it isn't anymore. Like my Krav Maga is not textbook at all. Right. But what I teach is, because I'm trying to convey it to other people. So
as I said, I was just in Georgia teaching at this conference, and I was teaching a weapons disarm seminar. And I start by telling these SWAT officers that are going through the class, I'm like, nobody's going to leave a seminar knowing anything. That's just that's that expectation. I'm going to show you a bunch of skills because it's fun, and that's what I've been brought to do. But you're not going to leave knowing any of these. Just remember principles. So, for example, when I teach a pistol disarm, right? I say you got to remember two things: get out on fire, set the fuck out on the fire, right?
Yes, I know.
Okay, how do I accomplish that? Right? You've heard me say that before.
I have, and I quote you often with that.
That's what it comes down to, because you're gonna fuck it up in a real fight.
Right. Yeah, you are.
Right?
Hey.
So, sorry, go ahead, Steve.
No, I'll let you finish, because I don't want to get kicked in the balls with the computer, because I know you're capable of doing that.
It's funny. Did you see the post I posted on social media? This guy comes to me at the conference. So I'm going to share it anyways, even though you both nodded your heads yes for the sake of our listeners. Guy comes to me at the conference and he goes, "You don't remember me, right?" And I go, "No, dude, I'm sorry. You got to help me." And he goes, "You kicked me in the ball." I'm like, "You got to be a lot more specific than that." and his buddy's standing right next to him. He goes, "What class are you teaching?" And I said, "The defensive tactics one." I'm so glad I did not sign up. I kicked one person in the groin. I did bust one person's nose. But that was it. So it was a good week.
Okay.
That's a little less than usual. But I was just gonna kind of reinforce what you guys are saying, and kind of validates too my idea. Paul, I met you for the first time again through Ernie at a Krav camp. Fell in love with you right away.
Who doesn't?
I know, right? You just can't help it. But that what you said, like that expectation, like one of the things when I teach, like BK and I, we're different instructors, although I trained under his tutelage and whatnot for years, but we teach in different
body because I learned from you just as much.
No, I know that, but in the traditional sense of ICS, you're my sensei, and I always have to respect that. And I know we learn from each other, and we always will.
I would expect you to start bowing to me every time I walk by.
I mean, I just like bowing to you because it stops me from kicking me in the balls. But it's like I always tell my students, because they'll come up, and I know you guys have experienced this stuff. What if, right? Like, well, what if they do this? What if they do that? And I always tell them, look, stick to the principles. There's no absolutes in fighting. Like you said, I fight a certain way. I'm giving you the tools, and you have to create your own fight. Like in capoeira, because I train capoeira. That's the one you didn't mention, but I've trained almost 15 years in Brazilian capoeira, and we call it a game. And we always used to say, we'll give you the tools. You have to play your game. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? When you're playing a game, playing cards, you work with your hand. It's the same concept. So I tell the students that there are no absolutes in fighting. Stick to the principles. Create your own fight. Because, like you said, I'm going to fight different than BK. BK is going to fight different from you, and so on and so forth. So, it's like you said, kind of like a symphony,
And it also depends on the circumstances. So, yes. For example, when I was a regular cop, with a uniform, I would handle confrontation in a particular way. When I was a covert asset and doing other things, I would fight in a different way, and it was more brutal and aggressive. And now I find myself working in EMS, and occasionally I have to go hands-on, and I can't do any of the things. Well, that's not true.
Stop giving Narcan.
But yeah, I mean, you give them Narcan and they come up, and I am doing a lot of control and restraint now because it's organizationally unacceptable for me to be punching people. So even when they're pulling knife, well, as long as you don't leave marks, but you have to when they're pulling knives on you and things like this, or hyper aggressive, or they're coming up out of a high, so it's always contextual as well. Like, where are you? Who are you with? So yeah, those what if questions, I always chuckle. I'm always like, okay, well, let's explore that. And they are a lot of fun because sometimes they're just ridiculous, aren't they? Well, what if, I'm face down and my hand's up here and they've got a knife to my throat? And I'm like, how did you end up like this? What happened?
You're hanging out with BK.
You already fucked up. So
yeah, you fucked up.
But you know what? To build on that, I'm going to say two things. First of all, you want 100% correct, and I'll take it a step further. What I tell our students is your fight shouldn't rely on what you like to do. That should be what causes the most amount of damage to the other person. It may not be the skill that you intended on doing.
No.
That's what needs to be done right there and then.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, when I was teaching this week, a lot of people came to me, knowing about my background in the Israeli military, and asking me about how much Krav do soldiers in the Israeli military get. And I'm like, minimal. When I went for basic,
God, yeah.
It's just, use your rifle, strike with a rifle. That's it. That's what you do for weeks. That's the extent of Krav. It's all about aggression, right? Because like you said, I can't teach you in 6 weeks a curriculum.
No.
But if I can get the right mindset into you and some basic principles that are going to keep you safe, then that's the best I can do, right?
Yeah, it's one of the misconceptions about Krav Maga. It's kind of a victim of its own success, I think, where there's this kind of mystique that you can become this super competent fighter in 6 weeks. That's it, you're done, because that's what the IDF does. And it's like, okay, so the system that the IDF uses to build mindset for its civilian to military population compared to the exported, marketed product that was sent out around the world for people to work through the different ranking systems and achieve a black belt or a level 1 or a what is it, M patch or whatever. It just depends. It is actually quite sophisticated and in depth. And when you really start to get into it, and then, like I say, you start to build your own system. But yeah, my black belt test with Ernie was frustrating because and that's what he wants, because he exhausted me to the point where I couldn't perform well.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, and like when I'm a pretty good stand-up sparrer. I've been doing that the longest. My kickboxing stroke taekwondo skills surprise even the young guys. I'm currently training. I'm currently training at a very good MMA gym that has and produces UFC fighters. So the standard is up there, and I haven't been there very long, but it's quite fun to go in there. And they kind of look at me. They see the silver savage, and they're like, oh, this it's some old guy, and then I kick him in the head, and they're like, oh, okay, and then I get beaten up. But it's my stand-up's good. When I was testing with Ernie, my stand-up was terrible because I was exhausted. And I could see, the processing, I could see the opportunities to do, and I'm just, and
an opportunity is gone.
Yeah, he uses me as he will laugh if he listens to this, because he always quotes my test, because you're going to fall back to your training, and it's kind of embarrassing. But this guy, we're in the middle of doing what we're doing, and this guy runs in with a ram pistol and starts just shooting people. So it's just in the middle of the test, no idea it was coming. He just runs in, just starts attacking everybody. So of course you're supposed to react to active shooter. This is what he's trying to do. He's trying to get in your head. So some people are kind of hiding behind tables or running out the door or whatever. And one other guy that I'd been training with a lot, he was pretty cool. He did the diversionary tactic, got shot in the arm, and I run up to this dude and I just kick him like boom, in the chest. And then he's like, when have you ever been taught to kick someone with a gun? I'm like, I don't know. I was so tired.
Hey, you did something, right?
Right. That's awesome.
But yeah, just full on roundhouses, boom, and knocked him down.
That didn't work.
You should have told me, just be happy I didn't bite his face off.
It worked, but it was like kicking someone with a gun. Okay. All right. Well,
I will.
Yeah, that was dumb.
So Paul, you moved to America.
I did.
The land of possibilities.
Yep.
You want to tell us a little bit why and where you ended up? And
please don't take us of a woman.
So I was married to a Texan, and we were living in the UK for a couple of years, and that was great. We had a good time. I was very involved with my job, and then for personal and political and professional reasons. So this is going to resonate with a lot of the cops, but there was some. I loved my job, but I didn't like. I was concerned by some events that happened where we'd been involved in the shootings and the way that the officers were handled and treated. Because these were good shootings in terms of they were legitimate, they were lawful.
Hey, Paul, not to distract you real quick, but this is a question that I've always been curious of, and I'm asking this as a police officer myself, because understanding the constabularies and how you guys do your job, how prevalent are armed criminals in England?
Okay, so this is actually a great question. I'm glad you brought it up. There is a huge misconception in the United States about armed criminality. Anybody can have a shotgun. You just have to apply. You have to have a background check. You don't have to have a reason. You can just say, I want to have a shotgun, and you can have one as long as you're not a criminal.
Are you limited to one, or can you get more than one?
No, you can have a few, but if you start getting lots and lots and lots, they'll be like, why do you need all these? But the shotguns are side by sides or over and unders. They're either for clay shooting or for game or something like that. Anyone can have a rifle, but you have to have a reason to have a rifle, which can be as simple as I want to shoot vermin on my friend's land who's a farmer. And they'll go to your friend and say, is this true? And he'll say, yes, it is. And then because of the population density, they'll map out the land and they'll say, okay, well, you can shoot in this direction, but you can't shoot in that direction because there's a town over there. But there's a little involved, more hoops to jump through. But you can get like 22 long rifle, 5.56, 308, .5 Creedmoor. You can have all those guns. You just can't have like an AK or an AR-15 or something like that.
So I couldn't live in downtown London and justify having a rifle.
No. Although I mean, you could if your friend lived, say, in Oxfordshire and he had a farm, and you said, well, once a month I go out there and I shoot.
Okay, gotcha.
No one can own a pistol unless, weirdly, you weld a suppressor on the end, because in England a rifle is determined by barrel length. So if you weld a suppressor on the end, now it's a rifle. So they have 3-gun competitions, but everyone's running around with suppressed pistols.
It's not a bad thing.
Which is kind of weird.
I find it amazing that in America suppressors are regulated, where in Europe suppressors are actually encouraged. I mean,
well, they're encouraged because of hearing loss. So there are a few agencies which have successfully campaigned to make sure they all get suppressed MP5s and things like that, because of if you're involved in a shooting, then you could lose your job because of the hearing. So they are all running around with suppressed guns, which is kind of cool. Now, there is a very strong and vibrant armed criminal element, but the criminals are kind of cagey about it because they only shoot each other. They're not running around mugging people at like gas stations or things like that, because that draws unwanted attention. Like if you kind of shoot a civilian, then that you will bring down the heat, as it were. But they shoot each other with great regularity. And it's the usual suspects. It's low income, inner city, gang related. Now there is a lot more knife crime because they're easy to get hold of, but there is, we were regularly taking. It's mostly Eastern European guns, so like CZs or CZs, as I would call it. Scorpions, the old ones, the little ones. Although we would get a couple of MAC-10s and things like that, Kalashnikovs here and there. So armed crime is alive and well in the UK. I was gainfully employed a lot.
But you're able to do your job.
Yeah.
You look at the culture of law enforcement now here in the United States as compared to England. I'm from what I understand from my friends that are still over across the pond, their hands aren't tied as they are for us here in the United States. Am I right or wrong?
You have to be more clear in terms of what you mean by hands being tied.
So as not to get so political, considering that I'm still gainfully employed for the time being, and I don't want to be fired.
Okay. Yeah.
As you see, society and how they view law enforcement, the misconception of militarization, of overaggression.
Okay.
And stuff like that.
It's a complicated dynamic. So, like, I could never tell anybody what I did for a living. I had to kind of vet everyone that I met and make sure they were friendly before I could admit that I was a police officer.
You mean those unfriendly British people?
Yeah, I couldn't ever wear anything that identified me as a cop. If you're married with kids and stuff, everyone's kids would never say what their parents did if they were cops. You would never display anything in your car that said you were a cop, because you go to the grocery store, you'd come back, all your windows would be smashed.
I think that culture is similar across the world.
I don't know, because here you have every cop putting like a thin blue line sticker on it.
This is true.
Yeah. No, you can't do that in England. You can't do that in England.
That's crazy, because you're starting to see that same mentality though here now.
Yeah, and it saddens me, because I was always very impressed and surprised that like cops here would take their squad cars home and things like that. Like, man,
yeah. So do I. I keep mine in the garage, covered, tarped, and nothing to show that I'm a law enforcement officer.
But there's a pride here with being a police officer. There's, we used to say when I was teaching at the academy that it's the largest gang in America, right?
That's what we used to say to the criminal gangs. They'd be like, "Well, we got a big gang," and we'd be like, "Well, our gang's bigger."
Right, bigger and better armed and better trained for the most part.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That association here in America, I feel, it's big. I mean, look at this. We have Police Week coming up, where cops from all over the country are coming together. Cops from all over the world, right? There's something about identifying yourself as a police officer in America that carries pride with it.
Oh yeah, and there's a certain amount of that in the UK as well. It was making me laugh. I've forgotten his name. I think he was the first guest you had on, and he was saying how he has more in common with cops from around the world than he does with. Yes, yeah. And it's absolutely true. And policing around the world is the same job. It's you get a load of grief from the public. You're just trying to do your job. You're scared. I think that, you know, there's this huge, I don't know, weird misconception that cops somehow aren't afraid or don't get scared. They're really well trained. They're super ninja fighters and they're all marksmen. And it's not true. It's just not true. They're just ordinary people who sometimes, mostly, okay, always, almost, are undertrained, underfunded, under-resourced. And they're going into situations now. They're going forwards to protect other people, and they get scared. And then, you know, afterwards, when things happen, like, you know, whether you just punch someone in the face or whether you shoot them, there's this whole like, oh, you know, well, you're a professional and you should have known better. And it's like, dude, I thought I was going to get killed. And I feel like I'm fighting with one hand behind my back because you know, they aren't holding back, but you're having to hold back all the time. Be professional, not curse, you know, not say anything wrong, not do X, Y, and Z. So it's really, really hard. But yeah, I was unimpressed with a few of the incidents that happened. It was evident that it was very possible that if I did the job I was trained to do, then at best I would be removed from the role that I was in, and at worst I would be arrested and have to go through. You know, there was a guy in our unit. He was continually being arrested and charged with murder for a shooting from decades ago, and they just kept bringing it up. The family would, I don't know where they got the funding from, but they, you know, oh, we've got this civil case, and it's like, oh man, just you know, the guy was a demonstrable gangster who was on his way to do bad things, and he drew a gun, and the cop shot him. Oh well, you know, couldn't they have tasered him?
Or shot him in the arm,
or shot him in the leg, or all that stuff. And you're like, all these people that literally don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, it's insane when it comes to that, because BK and I, we will have that discussion. BK is a phenomenal shooter. I like to think I'm a good shooter. We're always challenging each other. You know, we can shoot the balls off a flea. But I remember the one time in tactical when I was, what did you call it? Operational support.
Operational support.
When I was a operational support asset, I was getting ready to fire on someone, and all I remember was I never saw my sights. I had the visual exclusion, auditory exclusion. All I could hear was the other operator next to me's safety clicking off. And oddly enough, I had the whole report written in my head of how I had to write this and what I was going to face afterwards. It all in milliseconds, in nanoseconds.
It's incredible, isn't it? It's really hard to explain to people how simultaneously how quick your brain is working and how slow the world is moving, and it's like this inexorable thing that's going on, and you're thinking, "Oh no, this is."
It was not precision shooting.
And you're working through your conflict resolution management model.
Right. and then the last thing, oddly enough, and this is that warrior mentality that we can all appreciate. All I was preparing for, it wasn't a precision shot. It wasn't even pulling the trigger, although I could see the hammer going back on my pistol, was that I'm about to get shot. I need to be prepared to take these rounds in my vest so that the operators behind me don't get hit. That's what was going through my mind. Not, I'm going to take this bad guy down and put 2 to the chest and 1 to the head. It was like, holy crap, I got a report to write and I'm about to get shot. That's what was going through my mind. That's it.
But it's weird, isn't it? How I don't know how you think about protecting your brothers and your sisters more than yourself. I mean, and the camaraderie, and I miss that. I'm not going to lie. That kind of, you know, when you get into bad situations and your friend is who you know is a warrior and he's all teared up because he's like, so okay, I got badly assaulted at work, where I got
what was her name?
It was a very interesting experience, actually, because it taught me firsthand about positive mental mindset. Because people talk about, you know, well, why couldn't you just tase them? Why couldn't you shoot them in the leg? And I say, no, you don't understand. When someone has a positive mental mindset, which can be facilitated through drugs or through alcohol, but if they really want to do something, It doesn't matter what you do to them. They will achieve that objective. So if someone's running at you with a knife and you shoot them, they might not stop. They might keep coming and stab you, and then they fall down dead. And people are, oh, that wouldn't happen. So, well, I actually have personal experience of that, because I had to arrest this guy. My job was to apprehend this guy and arrest him. And he managed to hit me very, very hard with a cash box. So I got lots of piss take afterwards at work that I got beaten up by an inanimate object. But anyway, I got hit in the face, and it broke my trigger finger and my little finger. This one actually shattered into 7 pieces, and it split my face open here and split my lip open. Knocked me out.
Beautiful though.
I still look beautiful, thank you. And it knocked me out. So the next thing I remember is I'm on my hands and knees. I'm looking down at the ground, and my Glock's on the floor, and I'm reaching for it. And there's just this blood is just pouring out of my face. It's like a tap, a faucet, as you would say. And I'm thinking, oh no, I've got to catch him. And he's running away. So I pick up my Glock and I holster it, because I know that I can't run very well. Right, so I holster it, and I chase him down. And he's being apprehended by somebody else. It's all very confusing. My recollection of events do not match anybody else's, by the way. Anyway, so I catch him. And I'm hitting him, and I'm thinking, oh, this is my broken hand. This really hurts. So I'm like, this really hurts my hand. So then I switch. So I'm hitting. Oh, that's easier. And then I roll him over, and I get his hand behind his back in the handcuff position. So now he's arrested. Okay. So I've achieved my objective, haven't I?
Allegedly.
So I pass out. So my friend comes running up, and I drop my gun again. So my friend comes running up, and all he sees is me on top of this guy. There's blood everywhere. I've got a hole in my face, and there's a gun on the floor.
And he thinks he got shot.
So he thinks I've been shot. And because I was lying on top of him, he couldn't get to him. So they actually tasered him in the asshole. But that's a whole nother story. So
I would love to see pictures of that.
People usually pay extra for that kind of action.
But the point being that his as he's taking like the pressure up on his gun and thinking, do I need to shoot this guy? Because he's just lying there going like, because he's thinking that he's about to get shot, which he was. He didn't, as it happens. But afterwards he came to me, and he was all teared up, and he's like, I thought he'd been shot. But I think a lot of people, they don't understand that, the brotherhood and the camaraderie and the love that we have for each other in terms of
family is not just blood and genes. Like
no.
Often. And I think those bonds and those experiences that nobody else would get to experience. I mean, that makes this group of warriors, be it military or law enforcement, right, or even in EMS, right, super tight, because nobody else can relate on the same level.
No. And then when you laugh about it afterwards, and people are like, why are you laughing? That sounds awful. And you're like, well, it was funny.
I'm still here, right?
And I can appreciate, Paul, that you're in EMS now, because BK and I were both EMTs and TAC medics and whatnot. And I'm still, although I'm a county police officer, I'm certified as an EMT through our county fire department. Mm-hmm. So I do my skills training and stuff through them. And I always tell them, look, I love you guys, because if I get shot in the line of duty, it's you guys who are coming to treat me and transport me, which they have done. I've been injured, unfortunately, multiple times in the line of duty. So it's that warrior mindset is the same for them, because there's always that rivalry with the hose humpers and the police officers and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
But I've seen it myself, like you guys have, that when push comes to shove and if an officer is down, these guys will stop at nothing to make sure. Oh, there was my New York accent; it just came out. They'll come out and they'll do what they have to do to get to you, to plug those holes.
Oh yeah. You wouldn't
need to go. So
all those like war men. No, you'd have to hold me back.
When we talk about first responders, I think maybe it's an extended family, so it's not your tight.
It is. They're like the bastard cousins,
right? But you still love them. You're still going to do whatever you can for them. So that brings us into, you moved to America because of a Texan woman. You end up in Texas, and now you're in EMS. Yep. Anything in between? Anything important?
No, there wasn't anything. But I had illusions of setting up like a security company, and that's how I actually got into EMS. Is I thought, well, if I'm EMT certified, that will make me more employable for a client, because if you're doing your job properly, and you know this, if you're doing your job properly, then the ninjas dropping out the trees isn't really a thing. However, your typical client is probably more likely to be involved in a road traffic accident, or have a heart problem, or a diabetic, or a seizure, or just fall down the stairs. I don't know, something.
Reactions.
An allergic reaction. There is more likely to be a traumatic or a medical problem than the ninjas. So if you can provide the first level of care for them, then you're more employable. So I got into EMS through that kind of backdoor route. I never thought, oh, I really want to be an EMT. But then actually I started really enjoying it. And I worked with a lot of paramedics who were kind of a bit crap. So I thought, well, if they can do it, then I could do it. So I got my paramedic license and ended up becoming a senior field training officer. So I was responsible for coaching, training, and signing off other medics to go and work in the field. And it's a very rewarding experience to kind of work in a community like that. And like you say, it's like a different side of the same coin. You know, I'm going to the same calls, I'm going to the same stuff. It's just that my role is a different one. So the cops are kind of standing back, you know, making the scene safe, and then I'm going in and actually having to put hands on people who are, for various reasons, are injured or ill or something like that, or both.
Do you find that your old experiences as a police officer, and specifically in a tactical element, right? How does that affect your mindset providing EMS?
It's absolutely transferable. And I have done a lot of things at work, not every day, but there have been instances where my reactions have been different to a typical EMS, and my friends have said, wow, you went full cop then. So, you know.
But you know what, Paul? I mean, EMS, I know, you know, they have the 4 Rs here in the US, you know, retreat, you know, radio, reassess, and respond when it comes to some kind of situation where, you know, it might endanger your life. But BK and I, you know, we've created self-defense programs for firefighters, EMTs, paramedics. And it's necessary, because a lot of times you end up in a situation that might warrant some kind of law enforcement response. But yes, you all know as well as I, we're not going to be there, you know, as quickly as you need us to be.
No.
And they need to know how to defend themselves.
They do. And this kind of segues really nicely into, like, a topic I feel very passionate about in terms of the need to try to educate fire, EMS, police, and nurses, ER nurses, in just, it doesn't have to be super ninja stuff, but just, you know, some kind of hands-on self-protection. And it's frustrating because organizationally, organizations and committees and government agencies are very risk averse. They seem to think that if they train people how to fight, then somehow, you know, well, we trained you how to fight. And I'm always trying to explain to people that actually makes you less likely to fight. Yeah. Like, if you have the confidence to know where your boundaries are, like, you know, I walk into situations which I should be retreating from, but I can tell that that person isn't really wanting to fight me. They're just spouting off. Or I can tell that if they do try and fight me, then I don't need to resort to, you know, crazy levels of force. I'm pretty sure I can take this guy down without having to hurt him. Yeah. Because I'm trained and I know how to do it. So it actually makes everybody safer. It makes me safer. It makes the patient safer, because they haven't got some clown just hitting them. They've got another clown talking them down, restraining them gently. There's been a couple of times when I've held on to patients, and they've kind of done a bit of a double take, because just the way I hold them, I'm not you know, choking them out or anything, but just the way I take a hold of their arm, that, you know, there's a little part of their brain that goes, oh, this guy knows how to hold me. I better. And I'm not the biggest guy, but you know, you just kind of, there's little tricks that you do and so on. But no, it's absolutely transferable. My prior experiences, and I wish, I'm always trying to get backing for training, but it's frustrating because people don't see the need for it, and until they get beaten up and like, oh, I wish I knew what to do, and you're like,
everybody's reactive rather than being proactive.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because like you see agencies like in New Orleans, like you have EMTs wearing ballistic vests now, and it's starting to spread across other states.
That's fairly standard in London, by the way. Yeah, a lot of them wear it because of all the stabbings, and they get
attacked. It's standard here as well in no time, just because of the way things are going. We were actually able to prove with one healthcare system we work with that post-training, the workers' comp claims dropped by 50%.
Yeah,
just because they handle situations better. They didn't get injured.
Of course it is. Yeah, and it's. I mean, you would think it's obvious, but like I say, it's trying to find the right administrator to back you, to say, hey, I see the value in this. It brings insurance costs down, it brings payouts down, it brings workers' comp down. It's a safer work environment for everybody.
It has to be approached with a dollar sign. Unfortunately, the society we live in, nurses are given a lot of credit over the past 2 years. They've been put for the ringers, right, and working a lot of hours and very, very tough environments. But administration, and not sound like an asshole, they don't necessarily care about the human element as much. What they care about is that bottom line. And if you can show them that the cost of training significantly mitigates the potential cost they're going to have on the other side on lawsuits and workers' comp claims and stuff like that, you'll find that they'll be more receptive. That was our experience, at least.
Yeah, and it's an ongoing process, and then you tie that in. I mean, I think you mentioned it in one of your previous podcasts. I always say to people, particularly for law enforcement, who I don't know why they don't all train, because civilians come and train on the off chance that they might have a self-defense thing, but cops are going to fight. It's going to happen. It's not an if, it's a surety they're going to fight. EMS and fire, more and more, are having problems. Nurses are having to restrain patients. So these are environments where you're going to get into a fight. But I would say about cops, if you take 10 cops, 2 of them are probably already training in their own time in something. And it doesn't matter what it is. I don't care whether it's karate or Wing Chun or Krav Maga. I don't care. But
they're training. Tai Chi doesn't count.
Tai Chi doesn't count, no. But they're training. 3 of them, if you bring the training to work and provide it for them, they will be engaged and they will be good. They'll be happy. But they just, the work-life balance, they haven't got time to do it in their own time. But if you set it up for them in work and you have the budget for it and the time for it, then yeah, they're up for it. And they're quite good fun to work with. And then you use the other 2 to kind of help them along. 3 more of them will grudgingly turn up. They want to make sure they get their CE credits, or they don't really want to do it. They're not really. Yeah, they're not really. Yeah, they want to get paid for it. They're not really engaged in it. They're actually quite disruptive. They don't think they need it. This is stupid. Well, I've got a gun. I'm just like, oh my God, that's your entire self-defense plan, that you have a gun. Yeah. And then 2 of them, it doesn't matter what you do, they'll never show up.
Right. Yeah, 100%. and I agree with you. It's funny. So I just about 3 weeks ago, was it? I was in Georgia teaching a defensive tactics instructor class for a certain agency, and what they have done, which I appreciated, they actually pay for their officers' BJJ membership at a BJJ gym. So they all have to take jiu-jitsu. And whether or not you agree that jiu-jitsu is the best tool for law enforcement, that's a different discussion. But it is better than nothing, and it has a lot of good skills, a lot of good tools.
It does.
And ultimately, these officers, their pay and their continuing education, but mostly their pay and their ability to get promoted ties directly to whether or not they take advantage of this membership.
That's awesome.
I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah,
that is pretty cool. Yeah, and that would be and that would be great. I actually, I sound a bit weird when I talk about BJJ. I'm the worst BJJ.
Oh, no. Say it the way you like to say it.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
No, BJJ.
BJJ. Yeah. So I am the worst BJJ student ever in the history of BJJ. I've been doing it for 15 years, and I'm an eternal blue belt. It made me laugh when you were talking to Paul Jackson, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I started like 10 years ago," and I've trained with him, and he's like this awesome black belt. I'm like, I just don't have the mat time or the brain or whatever. I'm just the worst student ever. But I keep plugging away. I was there this morning, having like heart palpitations as I'm trying to fight off this 260-pound man. But still, it's really, I think as long as you go into it with the realization that, you know, it's great for keeping people humble. Like you have to stay humble when you're doing a BJJ, because it's you know, you're simulating murder, death, kill.
And it's always a short, fat little individual that's going to have the better of you. So Steve and I used to train with a guy. I love him to death. His name is Rogelio Soto. Black belt in BJJ, but he's short and he has a gut. And Rogelio, don't kill me for saying that, but you know I'm right. And you get on the mat with him, and all of a sudden this guy's like a cat. He's like all over you, and you're like, where did this shit come from?
Yeah, it
is like a cheetah with butterfly wings.
It is a fantastic art for controlling another person's movements. So I really like it for prisoner control and restraint, for rolling around on the floor. It fixes what is typically the biggest hole in Krav Maga, which this whole like, oh, we just don't fight on the ground. What do you mean?
Unless you're training ICS with BK, because we do have a dedicated grad curriculum. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. So like the best Krav Maga schools, when you go to them, and you know, Ernie's is the same, and when I train, it's the same. There's a lot of groundwork, because that's part of it.
I tell you what, Paul, though, but this brings up something. It's a point of contention. Help me out here. Contention.
Correct.
For me, sorry, a little too much whiskey. I mean, it's 8 o'clock somewhere in the world, p.m. But we, as law enforcement officers, and this is something I disagree with when I was an academy instructor, tend to always want to put our suspects on the ground, right? Which is great, you know, because, you know, BJJ exists. But I don't understand why. Like, even a person who's compliant, get on the ground, you know, let me see your hands. Why would I purposely put someone in a position, and myself, of disadvantage? You know, I never understood that. Like, if you can cuff them standing up, cuff them standing up.
I think the thought process is they can't run away as easily.
I think that's the whole thing.
But there's mitigation techniques for that. And again, this is a whole other discussion. You know, spread your legs. You know, this and that, blah blah. But
spread your feet. You can't say spread your legs anymore.
Right? No, that's what I'm saying. But it's always, you look at any officer when we go from 0 to 60. First thing we say, let me see your hands and get on the ground. Why? You know, like, I understand that there's situations that dictate that. But why purposely force myself on the ground? Which, as we all know, because we've all are practitioners of BJJ as well as our other arts, is not a great place to be. But even with a non-compliant suspect, it's so ingrained in us that we put him on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why?
And this kind of rolls in. I think it's like that, you know, lowest common denominator for someone who is completely untrained, who is relying primarily on their firearm,
and I can understand that, but
and it's a frustrating. Like, I mean, as you guys know, I love firearms work. I love training.
I've watched your videos of you and Bob.
So, but I like to blend the two together, because in a fight, and that's one of the reasons why I hit it off so well with BK. I think was because, you know, BK and I both understand that it's not about using the firearm. You know, there's this whole kind of idea that, you know, you're going to have this perfect isosceles triangle or weaver stance or whatever. You're going to be able to present both hands. You're going to be able to deliver like this nice tight grouping. No, you're probably going to be shooting one-handed, and you're fighting with a gun.
Mm-hmm.
You're fighting, but you have a gun, and that's a different series of techniques and
absolutely.
And from a physiological point of view, it's actually better if your shots are more spread out, because you're causing more more traumatic capability to stop the threat. Notice how I'm wording it.
Just so you know, Paul, because I know we are, our relationship is new. We're still building trust. You know, we're still in that honeymoon phase. You and I. That's your mentality. That's what drew me and how I met BK. When after we beat the shit out of each other and fell in love, and when I went through his class for a defensive tactics instructor, I went to his grand opening, and that was the idea. I was very, I was caught in the typical "this is how you have to do it" kind of thing, and he broadened my horizon kind of thing. So
my experience with training in the police, and this is fairly typical, is you've got your defensive tactics instructors who teach hand-to-hand stuff, and then you've got a separate class for your less lethal options like taser, and incapacitated sprays and other things, and then you've got firearms classes, and they don't tend to talk to each other.
Correct. Oh my God. Yes. That was my biggest argument.
And I'm like,
all be synonymous.
Like it should be. Like if you are fighting, you are bringing a gun to the party because you've got it on you. So you have to be always cognizant of everything you do is this. And if you're using your firearm, you have to be cognizant that someone might be grabbing onto you, or they might be pulling you, or you might be pulling somebody else off to the side and protecting them. And because it's not all at 15 yards, 3 seconds, you will deliver on
a target that faces you in one direction.
Yes, everything, and you've always got a good backstop. You don't have to be thinking, wait a second, I need to.
I love it. So you're touching on the two things that are my biggest, I guess, criticizing argument against law enforcement training. First of all, we don't teach them to fight, like you said. We teach them how to pass a qualification test.
Yes,
they just need to graduate. And there's one academy, I'm not going to mention it. They pride themselves in having 100% success rate. Everybody passes. Which
Great.
I think is absolutely awful because there's no standard. We're going to remove you, but eventually you're going to pass. I'm like, that's stupid. No, if the person can shot, they shouldn't carry a gun. Period. So that's a mindset that has to be changed. We don't teach anything realistic, unfortunately. The other things that you mentioned, we carry a gun, and a lot of officers are dependent on that tool. So they have 0 or 100. They have very little in between because they don't train.
Nope.
But that gun is more often than not the right tool for the job.
Nope.
And in the military it's different, but law enforcement, specifically in an urban environment, backdrop that you just mentioned is my biggest issue.
Yeah.
That run does not stop at a suspect. So you're gonna, and the same with civilians that wanna, they want to do the right thing for the right reason, and they want to form. I use places of worship as an example, right? Everybody wants to arm congregants. Yep. And I'm not against the idea.
No, as long as they know what they're doing.
Exactly. Training has to be the major component, because otherwise there's going to be a lot more dead people that were caused by the good people.
Yep.
Right. They cause more of a problem than they do a solution.
Yeah, it's a very complex issue. But yeah, I mean, I was wondering where these conversations would go, because I could go down so many rabbit holes in terms of, it's not just a gun. It's not just a gun that you buy. It's the ammunition that you use.
Right.
The performance of it.
Go ADD.
Oh man, the pros and cons.
We'll just have you back on, Paul, and we'll have a specific discussion on this stuff.
Oh, I would love to. I mean, you were touching on
it. I love hearing your voice in your eyes.
you missed on this before I hit record, though, so I'll say it also for the sake of our listeners. But we are going to be in August at the craft camp in Pennsylvania. Which, by the way, if any of our listeners are hearing this and you want to come, it's in Northern PA. It's 2 days of training. You have jiu-jitsu, craft, firearms, all kind of other arts.
And if I'm not broken, I think Ernie wants me to teach a combat capoeira class. So.
Yeah. And
that'd be fun.
If you're lucky, there are going to be nipple clamps included.
Let's not get into that part.
Yeah, that is an option.
But that aside, first of all, I think a lot of people are worried about coming because they say they don't have enough experience. This camp is phenomenal because it's good for all levels.
Yeah, it is.
If you experience, you learn something. If you experience, you learn something. So I think it's great on that end. But the reason I brought it up is Paul and I discussed earlier that when we are at that camp, because Paul Jackson is going to be there, British Paul is going to be there, the two of us, Ernie's going to be there. Gotta call him British Paul now. So
I got a crush on British Paul. I ain't gonna lie.
We're gonna do another podcast there with all of us together in one.
Oh my god,
that'd be so much fun.
That is gonna be a psychiatrist's dream.
Or nightmare.
They're gonna use that podcast for their schools as a case study.
Yeah, that could be
cool.
Quite.
I know we're going over the hour, and I don't want to take you all afternoon. Let me ask you this: you you obviously still train, you do your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you're still actively involved, and I would consider EMS to be 100% a protector. So you are in that savagery world. What are some things that you do now to stay a warrior? Like, what's your training like?
So I'm training with this MMA gym, which is keeping my fighting skills honest, and it's really good. So I mean, you have to seek out people that are better than you in whatever you do. If you're the best person in the room, you know you're in the wrong room, and all those euphemisms. So I am working on areas of my striking game which I've discovered are lacking. My ground game always can use improvement. I regularly do a lot of dry fire at home because that's a very underlooked and under-resourced capability, but I've got a couple of different weapon systems and I need to make sure that I can transition between them well. And then of course there's live fire, which is always more fun, but you know, you have to it's more expensive, but it's what makes it really fun. And
poor Bob.
But doing it intelligently. So you're not just, you know, I know that at 10 yards from the holster, I can put accurate shots on target. So, okay, that's great. But what about if I do this? Or what about if I'm like this? Or what about if I run around a bit first? Or what about if I drop and just do a bunch of push-ups? Or what about if I drop and do push-ups and try and shoot when I'm lying down? Or, you know, so you have to find the right range that let you do those things.
It must be easier in Texas though than it is in Maryland.
In the country of Texas, you could get away with that.
But I also it's been interesting. I've been working a lot on my general kind of health. There's an online trainer. It's quite nice. I can give him props. He's UFit UK, and he does everything online. And he's really educated me about diet and training. So I've kind of worked on that, and it's really interesting to. He confirmed a lot of things that I suspected about food, and my relationship with food, and you know I'm not having to eat kale and weird things. Everything that I ate before I eat now. It's just how I do it, and portion regulation, and just being aware of what goes in. So, and that has a knock-on effect that I'm in some of the best shape now.
Yeah,
as I'm about to turn 50.
I gotta say, you're a sexy dude, so it's working.
Well, I mean, I got a six-pack and everything I could show you, but yeah, it's which is amazing for me because you know when I was in my 30s and early 40s, I didn't have anything like that, but now. So just staying fit and also being intelligent in how you train, because I know you guys are the same. I've had shoulder surgery. I've had 3 knee surgeries. so consistently working out and doing that thing where, you know, I don't like waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to the gym, but if I don't do it then it's not going to happen that day, because then I have to go to work. And then by the time I'm done with work, I'm too tired. So forcing yourself to go to bed earlier, forcing yourself to get those 7 hours sleep, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, eating a good breakfast, going to the gym, then going to work, you know, eating right through the day and just being consistent. So like when my knee hurts, I don't rest it and go, oh, my knee hurts. I go and do squats, I go and do leg extensions, and I strengthen my knee to make it better. It's just that intelligent training that, you know, I wish I knew when I was in my 20s what I know now about how to train intelligently and to keep myself in the fight. Because as we get older and I get humbled in the gym, I realize that I need to be more intelligent about how I train and tap early. So I don't get early. Yeah, tap early. Yeah, and that translates into that kind of focus, because when you feel good, then that means that your mentality is in a better place. You don't feel as sluggish. You don't feel as just worn out all the time. And yeah, you know, I'm tired and things hurt, but then you just, well, let's get up, let's hit the day. And, just kind of attacking everything. I don't mean like in an aggressive way, but in a positive, I'm going to get this done. And
your day is so much better when you get that done. I find days that I work out in the morning, the whole day is just better.
Yeah, it is. It is. And
I'm in that same struggle now. Going back to work after some injuries, I cannot get up to work out, and I have to because I haven't been working out. So,
but you know, but when you get back into that groove, everything becomes easier. Everything becomes.
Oh no, you guys just motivated me. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Well, that's why Paul is the Silver Savage.
Yes, he is.
The epitome.
I've got the silver there. There it is.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah,
for a 50-year-old, you don't look a day over 49.
Hey, if I can look like you when I'm 50, I'm good.
Well, we mentioned your book. We mentioned you. I know you still teach Krav and other stuff. And you run classes all over. If people want to get a hold of you, buy the book, follow up for training, where can they find you?
Well, my Instagram is pew.kravmagar.biker, because I'm really into motorcycles. I love riding my motorcycle. But
what motorcycle do you have now?
I've got a BMW. S1000 XR, which is ridiculously fast and silly, and I've got a Triumph Thunderbird, a big loud cruiser.
So the BMW is what the Israeli, so some units within the Israeli police. That's what.
They're great. Yeah, they're hyper reliable. Really, it's a beauty to ride. It's
Paul, when I get a new bike, you're gonna have to join me, and BK you too. It's on my bucket list to do a cross country motorcycle ride.
Let's do it. It's fun.
Yeah, does it every time he comes to Krav Camp. He rides his bike from Texas.
I know, and I had to sell my Sportster because of my back and knee injuries. I just couldn't handle a small frame. But I'm going to get a larger frame, and it's on my bucket list because it is my dream to ride through the desert at night in a clear night and see all those stars.
Oh, yeah.
So you guys got to join me because you never know, we might get in a bar fight,
Make it happen. Yeah. But also you can get in touch with me through Krav Maga Universal. So that'd be kravuniversal.com. But then I've got my own company, Critical Care First Aid, because one of the things that I'm trying to do is to push that protector mindset into the civilian population. And we go at it from the first aid angle. So rather than kind of scaring people off in terms of, it's all firearms and fighting, if we go in and say, hey, what would you do if a family member had a heart attack or a medical emergency, or you're involved in an MVC? Here are some simple things that you can do. And then we kind of start, maybe you want to take this further. Maybe you want to defend yourself. Maybe you want to. So criticalcarefirstaid.com is another way to get in touch with me. I run that with an extremely capable lady who's based out of Missouri. And, we try and run that with each other. And then, of course, there's Krav camps. But if you just want to hit me up, that'd be probably the easiest way would be pew.kravmagar.biker on Instagram.
Awesome. Paul, always a pleasure.
Yes.
Hey, I'm not done. I got questions for Paul, so don't.
Sorry, I forgot. My bad.
Yeah. I wondered what you were going to ask me. Okay, go for it. Yeah.
Listen,
now people know. Now it's no longer a surprise. They're not being stopped.
Yes. Yeah, that's funny. He knew he was waiting for it. That's funny. I like putting people on the hot seat. I study history.
Yep.
All history, but specifically on war. But believe it or not, I have an affinity towards the English culture, because we wouldn't have ours without you all. My buddy always referred to us as the bastard cousins, but we'd go to war with England any day. So I got 4 questions, all right, based on English history.
How come he gets an extra one?
He gets an extra one because it's British Paul.
Oh dear.
Okay. You probably will get them all wrong.
Probably.
So your first question, all right, and now you got to revert not to the country of Texas, but to the country of England. All right. England was the first country to have what in their infrastructure?
Is this from a military point of view?
The first toilet was made in France. I think the French were the first one to have a toilet.
England was
infrastructure.
Well, I'm thinking toilet into sewage.
No.
Roads? That'd be the Romans.
I'll give you a clue. You guys, we call it a subway. You call it a
underground.
There you go. There you go.
Okay. Yeah.
The underground. You got one right. Yeah. All right. The next one. There are more of what animal in England than people?
Oh God. That's either sheep or cows, probably.
No. That's a sexual question. I'm not bringing that up.
Scottish though.
There's more animal than what than
this one specific animal than people in England. And this is a hard one, believe it or not, because it's funny because I love doing trivia with my police officers, and it's like BK said, I always get the sheep. I'm like, no, that's how we got syphilis. That's another story. Chickens. There are more chickens in England than people. All right. Other than English.
Hold on for a second. What are bangers, and why are they called bangers?
Sausages.
Why are they called bangers?
Because you know it's just bangers and mash. Yeah, you know, it's a food. Bangers and mash.
All right.
Yeah. All right. Other than English, for 300 years, what was the official language of England?
French.
Oh, you got one. That was quick. Good man. And last but not least, the first king of England had a curfew on all his subjects. And what was it? At what time?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. No idea.
It was 8 p.m.
Okay.
8 p.m.
Who was the first king?
I don't remember.
I don't know. You know where this comes from, though, but don't you?
Yes, the archers.
Yep. Good man.
Archers. This is the archers who resisted.
Which battle?
Paul and Steve are doing a V with their fingers.
Yeah.
So depending on how you do it, this is the V for victory.
This is the V for victory. This is the British equivalent of this. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So during World War II, soldiers would get criticized in pictures depending on which way this was facing.
Yeah.
Because archers would get their fingers cut off so they couldn't pull their bows.
And do you know the battle that's from? For extra bonus points for you, which battle did this?
Oh man, I want to say. For some reason, Edinburgh is popping in my head, but I don't know specifically.
The Battle of Agincourt in France.
Oh, so I was going to say the War of the Roses. No. It was my second question.
So basically, the English army was traveling through France, and it was a war of attrition. And the French kept attacking them, and they kept, having skirmishes. And whenever the French would capture a commoner, because it was the commoners who formed the archery teams, they wouldn't kill them; they just cut these fingers off.
Yes,
and
that's the answer.
Yep. And then finally, when the two armies met and they lined up against each other, and the French thought, they won't have the longbowmen because we've been catching them. The English lined up and they gave them the finger, and then and they.
So here, I got an ad hoc for you. An English lord once went to war with the King of Ireland because he was invited to dinner, but was bitten by an insect. What insect was it?
Where did you find this? How random.
Well, I'll put it this way. I'm reading a book, and BK, I showed you the book. It's called Six-Legged Warriors, and it's very intriguing. It's phenomenal. It's epidemiology and warfare. And I learned that a lord in England, I forget his name, it starts with a name. There was a northern region, was invited by an Irish king for dinner. The Irish king, I guess his bee nests were not far enough away. Stung the English lord in the eye. He lost his eye. So the theory of the eye for an eye, and they went to war.
Okay.
So it was pretty. They were talking about how the English use beehives in hand grenades, like they would make clay pots with stuff like that. It was pretty cool.
And you keep saying Edinburgh, don't you? Yeah, I've noticed that.
Don't say they knows. So it keeps going down.
It's Edinburgh. Edinburgh. Aye.
Listen, whatever. All right. Hey, fuck you. It's whatever I say. We won the war. We won the war, damn it. Twice.
Paul, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on. It was an honor and a pleasure.
Love you, brother. Can't wait to see you at the next crop camp.
Yes, we will have fun, and it'll be an interesting podcast, that one.
Yes, I can't wait now.
Especially if there's whiskey flowing. Oh, my God.
It's more than likely.